So these are the answers to the things that Troy mentioned. If you want really good pizza in Columbus, Ohio, I recommend Donato's. If you want really, really good ice cream, Baskin Robbins is there, and that's fine, that's good, it's tasty, but Grader's is way better. And Skyline Chili is really famous in Ohio and parts of Indiana. I don't understand putting spaghetti in chili, but that's what they do, and people love it. There may be a little bit of chocolate in the chili as well, so I don't really get that. But it's an Ohio thing. I didn't quite get to Cuba. I got to the airport, and then there was a problem with the visa, so I didn't get to go. But the next year, I got to go to Ghana and South Africa, so things have a way of working out. Again, not what I expected, but it turned out better than I would have planned. And Kathy and I have an agreement about our disagreement about what happened at the edge of a cliff in Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe in 1993. And so the agreement is this: if I die first, then Kathy can tell her version of the story at my memorial service. However, if Kathy dies first, then I can tell the story of her misunderstanding what happened. And so here's what happened. You want to know the story? So we were at Victoria Falls, which is beautiful, and there's a deep gorge. There's no fencing around the edge. And this is way before 1993, so a few years before the first cell phones were available. Now, Kathy and I we were in our late 30s. We were the young ones on this trip. So we could climb and sit all the way to the back of the van. But that's a different story. So we're at Victoria Falls, and I want to take a picture of the gorge. So I step to the edge, and I take the picture. I carefully step back. I turn around, and Kathy and these other women are just like, "What is wrong with you?" That's my version. Her version may differ. So. Absolutely. Absolutely, it was worth it. Yeah. We did not bungee jump, though, so that's the thing. So here's what I want to do with my hour today. I'm delighted to be here. First of all, I need to say that. It's good to see people, Myrna Phillips and Marianne Parrott and Michelle, who we share DSF board duties together, and was the associate at First Christian Church in Orange, where I worshiped often when I was a student at Chapman. Always good to be with Kathy, my friend of more than 30 years, probably close to 40 now. I realized I think I'm older than I look, I think. And so I'm not embarrassed to say I graduated from high school 50 years ago. And I went to my high school reunion last month. And I remember saying, remember when we thought 60 was really old? And now we're 68, and it doesn't seem old to us, it's just 68. So I have friends I've had for 50 years or more, which is pretty amazing. They're really old. So what I want to do today is tell 3 stories with a twist. And they're all biblical stories. They're all stories of Jesus and his encounters with women. And so I'm going to read those stories to you. And then I want you to put yourselves in groups, and we're going to focus, each group is going to focus on one of these 3 stories. So I'm going to have some Bible stories for you, some little Bible study for you to do in your group. And then I'm going to share a little bit of commentary from each story. And then I'm going to invite you to reimagine the story. And so I'll have some questions for you. to help you think in new ways about the story. I don't want you to be bound by the biblical story, but to use that story as a means of retelling this unexpected thing that Jesus does. So the first story, and they're all, I think, familiar stories. The first one is the story that we know of the bent-over woman. It's found in Luke chapter 13, verses 10 through 17. Now he was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath, and just then there appeared a woman with a spirit that had crippled her for 18 years. She was bent over and was quite unable to stand up straight. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Woman, you are set free from your ailment." When he laid his hands on her, immediately she stood up straight and began praising God. But the leader of the synagogue, indignant because Jesus had cured on the Sabbath, kept saying to the crowd, "There are 6 days on which work ought to be done. Come on those days and be cured, but not on the Sabbath." But the Lord answered him and said, "You hypocrites, does not each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or his donkey from the manger and lead it away to give it water? And ought not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan bound for 18 years, be set free from this bondage on the Sabbath day?" When he said this, all his opponents were put to shame, and the entire crowd was rejoicing at all the wonderful things that she was doing. And I just found an unexpected thing in this story. So what does Jesus do when he sees this woman? He lays hands on her, he heals her. Who does the leader of the synagogue chastise? The woman. Says to the woman, "There's 6 other days you could have come and be healed." Once again, a man does this, the woman gets the blame. I have just now saw that in this story. The second story, what's that? What somebody say? Oh. The second story is a little more problematic. It is the story of the Syrophoenician woman, one of my favorites. So what I did was I picked 3 of my favorite Bible stories to share. Mark 7, verses 24 through 30. From there he set out and went away to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know he was there, but a woman whose little girl had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him and came and bowed down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile of Syrophoenician origin. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. He said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." But she answered him, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Then he said to her, "For saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter." So she went home, found the child lying on the bed, and the demon gone. That story shocks me every single time I read it. And I always want to say, Jesus, I understand now why you're on vacation. Go lay the blanket in the beach and just relax a little bit. Then the final story is the story of the woman at the well. So he came to a Samaritan city called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired out by his journey, was sitting by the well. And we're not going to read the whole story. We'll start with 5 and go through verse 30, because this is one of the longest stories in John loves telling long stories, and this is one of them. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired out by his journey, was sitting by the well. It was about noon. A Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." His disciples had gone to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria?" Jews do not share things in common with Samaritans, we're told parenthetically. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have no bucket, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us the well and with his sons and his flocks drank from it?" Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But those who drink of the water that I will give them will never be thirsty. The water that I will give will become to them a spring of water gushing up to eternal life." The woman said to her, "Sir, give me this water, so that I may never be thirsty or have to keep coming here to draw water." Jesus said to her, "Go call your husband and come back." It's a little bit of snark. The woman answered him, "I have no husband." Jesus says to her, "You are right in saying, 'I have no husband,' for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. What you have said is true." The woman said to him, "Sir, I see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you say that the place where people must worship is Jerusalem." Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will worship God neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You worship what you do not know, but we worship what we know. For salvation is from the Jews, but the hour is coming and is now here, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for the Father seeks such as these to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." The woman said to him, "I know the Messiah is coming. When he comes, he will proclaim all things to us." Jesus said to her, "I am he, the one who is speaking to you." Just then his disciples came. They were astonished that he was speaking with a woman, but no one said, "What do you want?" or "Why are you speaking with her?" Then the woman left her water jar and went back to the city. She said to the people, "Come and see a man who has told me everything I have ever done. He cannot be the Messiah, can he?" They left the city and were on their way to him. Who wants to talk about the bent-over woman? Okay. I'm going to invite you to go, just for right now, just over in the corner over there. Everybody who wants to talk about the bent-over woman? And who wants to talk about the Syrophoenician woman? Okay, I'm going to invite you all to come up here for right now. And the woman at the well. Okay, I'm going to invite you all to go back there. And so as you consider, you all can, begin to have a seat around there where you can hear each other. And then for the last part of the exercise, the part after this, you can leave the room to have a little more space. But for right now, because you're all going to be answering the same questions in your groups. So as you consider the story of Jesus doing an unexpected thing with the women that you have chosen, can you share with each other a word or a phrase that caught your attention, something that stands out for you? Well, so you've talked about something that caught your attention. So here's question number 2. What is something that touched you positively or negatively as you heard this passage? Touched you, that struck you either positively or negatively? Okay. Question number 3. Question number 3. With whom do you identify in this passage and why? And okay, for this last question, for this piece, can you finish this sentence based on the conversations you've had? From what I have heard and shared, I believe God wants me to finish the sentence. It's kind of like you all practiced, you did this last night in the storytelling, some of those of you who were here. Finish this sentence. From what I have heard and shared, I believe God wants me to. All right, so you can stay in your groups before I send you out, and I'm going to just give you a little bit of background. I thought it was important for you all to do the first blush of this. This is how I prepare sermons. I read the text, I write down notes and questions, and then I look at a commentary. And because that commentary will either confirm, as a colleague of mine says, will either confirm or challenge. So here's some confirmation for you, maybe a little bit of challenge. For the bent-over woman, let me share these words from a woman named Janine Brown. After 18 years, the woman could hardly remember any other way of seeing the world. On this particular Sabbath, there was a special excitement at the synagogue where she regularly went to worship. A Galilean preacher and prophet, Jesus of Nazareth, had arrived in town and would be teaching there. She and others in town had heard reports about Jesus, how he talked about God's reign arriving soon, how he healed sick people. She wasn't sure how many of the rumors to believe, but she was trying not to get her hopes up because her life already had too many disappointments to count. When she entered the synagogue, the place was abuzz, was all excited. As Jesus began to teach, however, the room hushed. Moments later, his words turned from teaching to invitation. He had caught her eye, no easy feat given that he had to lean over and incline his head to do so. Come here, he said to her as she slowly made her way to the front of the assembly. What happened next amazed the whole congregation. Woman, you are set free from your ailment. When this man Jesus spoke those words and put his hands on her bent body, she felt power surge through her. And without hesitation, she straightened her once crooked back, stood tall, and praised her God. So just ponder that. We're the Syrophoenician woman people. Okay. This commentary comes from Will Gaffney from a sermon that she did called The Woman Who Changed Jesus. So she says, finally Jesus speaks. I would help you, but. He doesn't say that part out loud, but we can hear it behind the gospel text. He says, it isn't fair to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. She and her daughter are dogs in this proverb and in his mouth. Ancient Israelites and Jews in the first century and rabbinic period despised dogs. They were unclean scavengers that ate dead flesh. An Orthodox rabbi once told Will Gaffney, he'd never even heard of an Orthodox rabbi who owned a dog. Jesus has, for all intents and purposes, called this woman, I call it the B word. And she leans into his proverb to turn it back on him. She said, yes, Lord, even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their Lord's table, from their Lord's table. She uses the same word, Lord, throughout, I believe, challenging him to show what kind of Lord he will be. Will he be a loving God or a slave master? In that moment, something happened to and in Jesus. He starts looking and sounding like the Jesus we know and love, or like the Jesus we want to know and love. He praises her faith in him as Lord, faith that as a man who had his own mother, he would do the right thing, faith that whatever it was she had heard about the man called the Son of David was true, faith that there was more to him than the first impression suggested. He healed her daughter in that very moment. She left that place with her daughter, whom we never see and don't even know if she was present, restored to wholeness, and Jesus left that place walking towards a whole new understanding of his ministry. The closing words of his gospel, go therefore and make disciples of all nations, teach us that Jesus has made room at the table for everyone, Jew and Gentile alike, because I believe, that is, Will Gaffney believes, because of his encounter with this woman. And then the woman at the well. Where are those folks? Back here? Okay. Sychar was the site of Jacob's well. In the Old Testament, this was where Jacob first met Rachel. That's a whole other soap opera. We'll talk about that another time. Where it was love at first sight. This is our first clue to what this story is about. Back when Jacob first met Rachel, the Jews and Samaritans were one people. They shared a common faith, a common heritage, a common devotion to God. It was back in the days before they went their separate ways, pointing their fingers at each other and accusing each other of infidelity. So Jesus comes back to where it all started. Like his forefather Jacob, he came with a proposal in hand, but not a marriage proposal. His proposal had to do with reconciliation. That was his mission, to reconcile God to the world. In order to do that, he first had to reconcile the Jews and Samaritans. That's what this story is about. Noon, when Jesus arrived at the well to rest, is the time of day when the sun is highest overhead. It is the brightest part of the day. Jesus would have us know that it's a moment for God's self-revelation. It was also the part of the day when you weren't likely to find many women at the well. Women drew their water in the cool of the morning or late afternoon. It took a strong woman to draw her water in the heat of the day, an independent and resolute woman, a woman with a mind of her own, a woman like Rachel, who, if you remember, also came to the well at high noon the day she met Jacob. Soap opera aside. Two things. Both the story of the woman at the well and the story of the Syrophoenician woman are stories that I have heard most of my life until I began to do my own kind of study and discernment. The story of the woman at the well is often described as a story of shame. That this woman was so wanton, so slutty, so of ill repute, because she had sexual agency of her own, and we can't have that amongst women, can we? That she was too embarrassed to draw water in the morning. Nothing in this story suggests that. It's sort of Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. Show me in the Bible where it says that, I'll wait. The Syrophoenician woman is so desperate that she's okay. She doesn't mind being shamed. She's got a larger thing in mind. I don't care what you say about me. My daughter needs healing. So we deal with a lot of shame still. That women have to deal with a lot of shame. And so those are things that we have been told as we hear this story. I've heard to kind of pretty up this really kind of ugly story that Jesus was testing this woman. No, he wasn't. I think Jesus was just tired, he wasn't in the mood, and this woman comes to him with one more thing while he's on vacation. Jesus breaks every taboo at the well, that his disciples are astonished, I say, that he is talking to a woman, and yet there he is. One of the few people to whom Jesus acknowledges his real identity as the Son of God. Doesn't explain why he's talking to this woman, he simply is. And this woman at the well becomes kind of a pre-resurrection evangelist. Come and see this man who knows all about me and loves me anyway. Here's what I want you to do now. And if somebody with a pen, you may want to write these down. I want you to retell this story. And you don't have long to prepare. I'll give you about 15 minutes, and then you're going to come back and share this story, because I don't want to be the one who throws us off schedule. And so there's 4 things I want you to do. The first thing is to give each woman in this story what she does not have. Give her a name. Because names are important. And to not have one says, I'm just going to tell you the story, but who it's about is not all that really that important. The second thing is, kind of, how did she get to this moment? If this was a TV show, we'd be doing a flashback to tell the backstory. Kind of, how do we get to this moment? How does she get to this moment? The third thing is, who else contributed to her situation? Who else is part of this woman's story besides Jesus? Who else is part of her story? And then the last one is, how was this woman changed by her encounter with Jesus? So, name her, give her a name. What's her backstory? How does she come to this moment of meeting Jesus? Who else was part of her life? Who else contributed to her situation, helpfully or unhelpfully? And how was this woman changed by this unexpected encounter with Jesus? So by my watch, it's about 9 minutes after 10. I want you to come back at 10:20. So 10 minutes, rapid fire, you're gonna just kind of spitball this and tell this, kind of develop a new story for this woman, and then we'll come back and report out. So tell us the story of the Syrophoenician woman. Who is your spokesperson?
Well, her name is Helen Dorkis, and she heard that she probably didn't. We didn't hear anything about her husband's story, but she heard about Jesus as a healer, and she had tried probably many things before that. Probably was an outcast in her community because her daughter, not a son, was sick, and her daughter was sick, so that she probably had a different place in society. She cannot be allowed to healing on Sabbath because she probably wasn't allowed through the gates. So she is a Gentile. How did that change her after her encounter with Jesus? We believe that she was validated and she was humble when she went through Jesus to ask for that healing. But it took a lot of her faith to be able to go in the presence of Jesus because she had no reason to trust him. She was not a Jewish person. She didn't know how her presence there will be either accepted or not when she will go in front of Jesus. But we believe that she opened doors to other non-Jewish people. For example, Paul, who was a Gentile, her experience of being one of the first people that had that encounter with Jesus to tell them that they're also worthy of his healing presence. And maybe possibly after that encounter, she had a different place in society where she became free from caregiving, and she probably had additional time to be in society and do other roles within the society that before the story wasn't there, allowing her to.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Well done. Well done. Let's talk about the woman at the well.
We decided that her name was Hope. We decided, and where's all my notes? Okay, we decided that her name was Hope. How did she get to this moment? We thought that she got to this moment by the culture and by the attitude, but we also thought that she got to this moment through generations, that generations had behaved in a certain way and had seen women a certain way, and that behind her, this is kind of also part of 3, behind her were just literally generations of attitudes and mistakes and acceptance of things that were wrong. So we think she got to that moment because within the generations and within the cultures that she was really feeling trapped and powerless. And in that trapped and powerless feeling, she was doing everything she could to feel like she had some control over herself, even if that was just that she got her water in the middle of the day so she didn't have to put up with all the crap from everybody else. And how was this woman changed? We felt like that Jesus did give her the hope that she had been searching for all of her life. And we also felt that she went from being nobody to being somebody. Not just for the people in the culture that they could now see her as somebody special because she had had a one-on-one with Jesus, but that she was changed internally. That meeting Jesus gave her her own personal sense of value and worth.
And then the bent over woman.
Okay, so our story is about a woman named Deborah. Deborah is a very strong woman with a strong name. She came from a family that had sons, 2 sons, and just 1 daughter. And because of that, she didn't end up getting fed as well. So her diet, along with being born with a curvature in her spine, caused her to slowly become more and more bent over. The men in the family were more important, so they got the most of the food so they could do the harder work. And society shunned people that had all of these different, if you were different and you weren't like everybody else, you were often shunned and not taken care of, which brought her to have a very, very low self-esteem of herself. And so it was very easy for her to keep looking down and not feel important, and became more and more curved. When she met Jesus, she was able to be healed by him, which gave her a totally different outlook on life. Even what she was able to see in front of her was completely different. She didn't have to look at the ground. She was able to look at the sky and the world in a completely different way. She was able to face people face to face and look in their eyes and feel respected and honored, and she really knew that Jesus cared. The physical change also turned into a completely emotional change, because once again, she was not different from everybody else. She was standing up, able to be part of the community, and not shunned and not left to be a nobody, but really started feeling like somebody important.
Great, thank you. So just 2 more things. So go ahead, Kathy. Oh, okay. Well, I've got one, so you can give it to Kathy. Kathy pointed out something else about the woman. Yes.
Just really quickly, I wanted to mention that the last question you asked was, how are these women changed?
Mm-hmm.
But how was Jesus
Yeah.
changed by these women?
Yeah.
I think that's important. You might start your path this way, but as you meet other people and circumstances, it changes you.
Right. Yeah, she was just asking that a question I could have asked, and I will the next time, is how was Jesus changed? Will Gaffney is very clear about how Jesus is changed in the Syrophoenician woman. It's the woman's standing up to him that changes him. How is he changed by healing the one we know as the bent over woman? How is he changed by talking to the woman at the well? That's a really good question. Thank you. That's a really important question. Kathy had an insight about the bent over woman that I had forgotten. And could you just share that again?
About your husband's name?
Yeah.
Well, in the story, he calls her a daughter of Abraham, which makes her equal to the men. It's the only place in Scripture that you hear somebody called a daughter of Abraham. You hear out sons of Abraham all the time, but he names her a daughter of Abraham, which would have been a crazy thing to do in public, because it would be way out of what was normal.
Good, thank you. So one of the joys of reading the Bible is the ability to just see a new thing all of a sudden, to find that unexpected thing that maybe our spirits are ready to receive, that we haven't heard it before, haven't really seen it, even though we've seen it. So I'm a semi-defender of the Apostle Paul, who I know women find problematic. I get that. I have some issues with Paul myself. Here's what Paul does that the gospel writers don't do. He names women. The women in Paul's stories have names, which says to me that he understands the importance of these women as partners in the gospel. So just another little nugget. I hope that you now have another way to study the Bible, to do Bible study in your own meditations. I hope that you have permission, like it's mine to give, it's not, to rewrite the stories that we hear in the Bible, to make them contemporary, to make them present themselves in ways that are relatable. We all have that experience of somebody trying to dismiss us, dismiss our real legitimate concern. Don't believe me? Turn on the news. That's all I'll say about that. We all have an experience of being asked why we are in a certain place. That kind of, somebody calls it resume checking. Woman at the well, why are you here? Why are you really here? Where are, and people of color often get this, and I won't be that general. I often get, where are your parents from? Arkansas? Where are they really from? The United States? You read really well. Thank you. I've been doing it since I was 4. And so that kind of resume checking that people do. We know that we just often don't see people who do not walk in what we think of as perfect health, which is all of us. None of us is perfectly healthy, even if we're healthy. And so it's easy to dismiss the bent-over woman, the woman at the well, the Syrophoenician woman. But Jesus tells us, even when it's hard, even when it's disruptive, even when we really don't want to, that we have to see people. What's the phrase? We don't see people as they are, we see them as we are. And so kind of maybe the next question, next time I do this, I'll add the question is, who is Jesus in these stories? So thank you for provoking me to keep thinking about these things. Thank you for your participation, for your creativity. Thank you for being here and inviting me to share this time with you. God bless.